So kia ora tātou, welcome everybody to this morning's Strategic Planning and Policy Committee meeting. Apologies for the late kick-off, just had a few administrative items to address before we got underway. So the first matter on our agenda obviously is apologies. I have them from Graham Webber, Liz Stolwick and Elwyn, Andre Wiltons. Roger's happy to move, Andrew's happy to second. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Disclosure of any members' interests. Are there any today? Thank you, Lou. Got that. Fantastic. No other ones? Perfect. So moving on to the next matter is a late item now. This is the thing that drew our attention earlier. Jim, I think, is going to address this.
Yeah, I just wanted to raise that it was a late item regarding the Presbyterian Church application. It's not requiring any funding, but and I couldn't pick up in the staff response or the submission, but to enable them to carry on making funding applications to other organisations, just having them listed in our plan as supported but not funded, something along those lines. So I just wonder if we can make sure that that's included in the response back, so it just assists them with funding to other organisations.
So on that basis, in order to have a late item addressed, I think we have to pass a recommendation that the consideration of the Presbyterian Church be a late item so that the organisation can proceed with further funding applications. Yeah. Okay, and you're happy to move that?
Yeah, I'll move.
Jim, Mike will second. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. So moving on then to the confirmation of the order of the meeting, I think we'll put that late item at the end of the meeting, of the open section. And beyond that, is we comfortable with the order? Lou's happy to move. Claire will second. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. So that moves us then to the confirmation of minutes. This takes us a little while here, a few pages to address. So it's page 7 of our agenda. So as is usual practice, I'll just cite the page numbers, and we have a couple of typographical errors in a couple of the pages, but we'll just start with the first lot, which is the minutes for the Tuesday, 4th of May meeting. Pages 8. Oh, Claire.
Madam Chair, you're just right at the bottom. The resolution should be that the committee confirm the order of the meeting.
Okay. Not past tense, confirmed, but to confirm. Excellent. Yeah, confirm. Got that one. Thank you, Claire. Then pages 9 and 10, 11 and 12, 13 and 14. Comfortable with those? So we have a recommendation there on page 7 to receive, sorry, my eyes are going a bit wonky, that the open minutes that we've just been through are true and correct. Record of that meeting. Andrew and Phil, all those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. So that moves us on to the item number 6, which is confirmation of the long-term plan hearings and deliberation minutes. So that appears on page 15 of our agenda, starting there. And we'll do the same thing. Obviously, it's going to be a bit longer, 26 pages. I do have a couple of errors, typographical errors here to pick up. I imagine Claire's got them. So we'll start there on page 16. Claire.
Yes, so with the disclosure of members' interests, where I declared it, it's actually the Pirongia Restoration Society.
Okay, not trust. What you're saying? Okay. Moving on then to the next page, page 2 and 3, 4 and 5, 6. I believe on 6 we've got a staff are aware of a typographical error and Mr. Feist's name, Rob Feist with 2 S's, not the one, but we've caught that one. Claire?
Yes, and on the same page, Mark Crisp has got an H in his name.
Oh, yes, I see that one. Shaw's Property Holdings.
Yeah, and then for the Des Ratima for the Creative Waikato, so he didn't actually present. There were 2 women that spoke in his place.
So Des is actually Desiree.
Desiree.
Oh, okay, right.
So she is one of those women.
She was one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, that's cool. Thank you.
Cool, that. Comfortable with that? Okay, page 22. Happy with that. 23. 24. Clear.
I just at the second to last person on that list, it's got Alan Topari.
Yep.
I'm just asking what action is going to be taken with his request to have a place of prayer, like in the library? Yeah, like is anything going to happen? Because
I can find out for you, Claire, and get back to you at the next meeting.
Thanks, Claire. Moving on to page 25.
Chair.
Yes, Claire.
Yeah, so halfway down the page, we've got Tania Witherford, and her surname's got has an H in it.
Yeah. Thank you, Claire. Page 26. 27. 28. 29. 30. Claire?
So the resolution there in the middle of the page, it mentions that we accept the mitigation measures, but the mitigation measures have not been sort of listed at all, what they were. Yeah, and in the preceding body of the minutes. So most of the mitigation measures were treatments of depreciation and the use of operational reserves to reduce the rates impact.
Yeah, I think it says here though, they were the measures that were included in the financial overview presentation, and we actually can't change the resolution now because that's what was actually passed at the time, referencing information that was provided to us in that financial overview. But I see what you mean in terms of it actually being absent from being captured. But from my understanding is we can't change that resolution now because it's been passed. But you're right, that is a slight lack of capture, if you like, of that information. Is there anything we can do about that? We certainly can't change the resolution.
Can't change that.
Andrew?
I think you're right that the financial overview can be referred to from this, which does hold all the information. So it is available.
It is. It's just not directly referenced in a specific content sense in the resolution itself. Joe suggested that we could amend the minutes to attach the presentation that we were provided. You happy with that? So that'll be a small amendment there, just for clarification. Thank you, Claire. So that's page 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40.
Madam Chair, just
Clear.
on item clause 5, V at the end, and the third line, there's a little word missing. It says that due to the debt issues, so as a result.
Many of the staff advised to submit by deleting the second paragraph and replacing with the C4 growth costs were not included. Oh, there should be probably some.
Yeah, we can't.
So
It's a
as a
resolution.
result-
It's in a recommendation. So we can't change it.
The issues. Yeah, again, we're caught because it was a resolution.
Yeah, it does what it needs to do. Okay.
Yeah, it does read somewhat clumsily. You're quite right, but unfortunately, it's in a resolution which you can't change now. What day were we on then?
That was at the end.
That was
after a very.
that was probably about 7:45 at night, day 4.
And I was one of the ones that seconded it. So
Excellent, yeah. So I think the intent is carried within the poorly worded comment, but yes, I accept your observations, Claire. So
a magnificent effort in capturing all of the business that happened during those deliberations.
I have to say, as I read through it, I almost relived some of those more painful, brutal hours. Okay, so page 40. At 41, and that's the last page. There were a couple of typos that had been picked up up here, which we've captured. They're just spelling mistake, the odd spelling mistake of people's names. So they'll be changed as well. Did you? Okay, so the recommendation is that the open minutes of the Strategic Planning and Policy Committee long-term plan meeting held on 11th, 12th, 13th and 19th of May 2021 have been circulated, been read and taken as confirmed as a true and correct record of that meeting, subject to the corrections to item 2, being the Pirongia Restoration Society and the Te Awamutu and District Memorial Return and Services Association and other minor typographical errors, and to add the financial overview presentation for the 2021-2031 long-term plan accepted as a late item to the SPNP committee on the 13th of May 2021. There are other, I'll just for the sake of clarity say there are other minor amendments in terms of names: Rob Weiss, Ruth Webb, Phil Mackay, Brad Ward, and Cambridge Football Club submission. So happy with that, Claire? You're happy to move? And Lou will second that. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Fantastic. So that moves us then to our item on the agenda, the Kihikihi Urban Development Plan, approval for public engagement. Good morning, Justine. Come and talk to us.
Morena, lovely to see you all here this morning. All right, so I would like to take this report as read, but I do have a few little things I would like to add to this. So the first is that we are planning to go to the Kihikihi Residents and Ratepayers Association on Wednesday, the 16th of June. Thank you very much, Councillor Gower, for helping organise that. The second one is that we are working with our community advisors here at Council to engage with Kihikihi School. We will also be engaging with Mana Whenua. Again, throughout this, I'll certainly be seeking input from Bill Harris and Harold Mangiapoto in this regard. And the final point that I would just like to add is that this report was actually prepared in advance of the LTP hearings, but in the subsequent comms and engagement plan that has been prepared, we have been mindful of the Residents and Ratepayers Association submission points.
Justine. Right, I suspect Hazel will make a comment here.
Of course, and I'm sure
Hazel.
Marcus will back me. I take great pleasure in moving it so that we can actually get cracking, and that's what that Kihikihi Urban Development Plan will allow the Kihikihi Residents and Ratepayers Group, which is representative of most of the groups in Kihikihi. So that's, you know, in one meeting you actually probably capture a lot of very interested people. So it's my pleasure to move it, having read it through and got quite excited.
Claire.
Yeah, I think it's a great plan as well, and it looks pretty exciting too. But one of the things that came from our deliberations was a presentation, you know, from those that community group about the skate park, and they said that the ideal place was the Tūrata Reserve. Like, one of the challenges I thought that is the community's facing is that they do have some great reserves and that are open space at the moment, but that there might be pressure, you know, to actually develop them to make them more usable. Oh, you're shaking your head, Hazel.
Look, if I can just catch you up to date. We've actually had a meeting with Harold Maniapoto, Bill Harris, Bill's here today, the Māori Women's Welfare League, and they are going to come up with a plan that our iwi out there have quite a lot to say about the return of the land. And so we're just allowing that. And with the urban development plan, Madam Chair, we could see that we would be able to then put together a plan that has actually consulted everybody as what is the best thing to do. And so we will wait till we hear from them and what is their plan.
Sounds like a really great way forward. Yeah, and so I just wanted to say, Justine, I did pick up a few typos, so could I just send them through to you? Yeah, and especially like using the macrons in the names now, like for Ngā Iwi Topo or Waipa and Tūrata and things like that. Yeah, so yeah, I'll send it through to you then. Yeah, thanks.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions for Justine? Andrew.
Not exactly a question, but yeah, very pleased to see this on the agenda because Kiki is infilling quickly now and has been for the past probably 3 or 4 years, and it's really timely that the residents get the opportunity to make sure that they are involved in how Kiki evolves. So yeah, very pleased to see it.
And
Hazel.
if I can just let you know that at another meeting that we held last week, again, the hall was full of people and all of them putting their hands up to be on the committee to have their say. So I think this time, and that's talking in really good sized numbers. So yeah, I'm sure we'll hit the nail on the head for you.
No, I'm just going to grant Bill an opportunity to address. You might have to come over and use a microphone. Bill Harris. Right,
Kia ora koutou. Kia ora to fellow council members. Kia ora Miriata. Just to say that thanks to Justine for including mana whenua in the discussions about the urban plan. That was really welcomed, and I just wanted to acknowledge that. So thank you for that. And Hazel's quite right. We are looking at the Tūrata Reserve in a totality, because yeah, there's some historical, significant historical work that is still to be done in and around that, in terms of the Maniapoto Reserve as well. But I just wanted to acknowledge the part in the urban plan that talks about mana whenua looking for space for kaumātua housing, papakainga. And that's something I know that we've been talking about on the iwi Consultative Committee and the plans the council has about papakainga housing. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, having been put in after speaking with Harold and I. And thank you for that, Justine. Thank you to the council.
Thanks, Bill. Yes, I noted the references in there in terms of papakainga housing as well, which is certainly a space we need to be doing a whole lot more work in. Any other comments? Obviously very well received, Justine. I take it Hazel's happy to move, and I invite Marcus to second it. You have to. I'll put it to the members. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thanks, Justine. Thank you to your team.
You did all the hard work for me.
So moving on then to item number 8, which is our land report 2021. This is on page 77 of our agenda. Kia ora, Joe. Take a seat.
I'd like to take the paper as read and then basically do a couple of highlights. Every year, the Ministry for Environment and Stats New Zealand do a focus paper on one element of the environment. And this year they decided to do it on land use and intensification. And as you can see in the executive summary, as a country, we are not good at protecting our highly productive land. Around 15% of our land in New Zealand is good for food production. However, between 2002 to 2019, the area of highly productive land that became unavailable for agriculture due to housing development increased by 54%. In the same period, the urban areas increased by 31% on land that could have been used potentially for agriculture. So the report highlights that basically our land is important for our well-being. It connects Māori to their whakapapa and their tikanga and their history. It provides for our well-being, for ecosystems, habitats. It provides for food, it provides for housing, and we're getting to the stage now where sooner, probably rather than later, we will need to start making decisions about how we treat our highly productive land. I'm not sure if the members were aware, on Sunday, a couple of weeks ago, they had a session on the MPS for highly productive lands, and they were talking about what it's going to do, and the fact that a lot of people involved in agriculture, especially around Pukekohe, are now being pushed off the land because residential developments are coming up to a certain boundary and people don't like the noise or the smell or the fact that fertilisation goes on and stuff like that. So we've got the MPS coming out. It's meant to be the end of next month. I've talked to MFE with some people I know there. They're not quite sure if they're going to meet the July deadline, but it will definitely be out by the end of the year. And it's about balancing the demand for housing along with the need to protect our highly productive land. I also note that in the Waipa district, we have 9% of our land is highly productive.
Yeah, I was going to question that. It's on page 83 of your agenda there. It's Waipa is experiencing high growth and demand for housing. This growth begins in families and At the same time, 9% of the country's highly productive soils are located in the Waipa district. Yep. So is that 9% of the 15%? Because 15% of the country has it. So is it 9% of that 15%? I know it's quite a lot relative to the rest of the country.
I'm thinking it would be, but it wasn't actually clearly set out in the report. So I've got a link to the report on the first page of this report. But I do know that we're kind of seen as having a lot of highly productive land.
Yeah, no, look, you're preaching to the choir, I think, around the table, and potentially me in particular. I guess for me, there was one comment that sort of grated a little bit for me on page 81, where it said that intensification is associated with environmental damage and concern about soil quality and health. I mean, realistically, I challenge that assumption. It's really unmitigated. If it's unmitigated intensification produces those harmful that harmful damage. And I think it's that mitigation space that a lot of farmers and growers are working crazily to try and develop and grow capacity in, because we are balancing this build a house, feed a family kind of scenario, aren't we? And one doesn't trump the other. So it's a very real problem for sure.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed reading your report. Thank you, Joe. Any other comments? Sorry, did you want to go further, or?
I'm good.
You're happy to take questions? Mike and then Hazel.
Yeah, through the chair. Look, just on that same page, though, what really stood out to me there, and I think Mayor Jim mentioned it a couple of weeks back or so, but that land use modifies the natural environment and is a long-term change which can be irreversible, effectively is irreversible. I mean, you can never, even if you bolt the subdivision down the track, the topsoil is dispersed to somewhere else. It is not what it ever was and can never be again. So Yeah, it is something I guess, as a district council, we just have to be really aware of what is highly productive, and but I guess that's what the geologists are for, to test that when it comes down to individual people under subdivide.
Madam Chair, just
Yeah,
a quick
Jim.
comment follow on it, and I appreciate your comment. You're preaching to the choir around here, and look, I just really want to reaffirm how successive county and district councils have actually protected the soil within Waipa from premature subdivisions, etc. So, look, I think this paints a gloomy picture nationwide, but we're at least at the front of the game here in Waipa, and we just need to continue along that line. So it's not all doom and gloom from Waipa's perspective, but it's only because of a consistent approach to protect that soil, and it's absolutely imperative. So fully support the report.
Yeah, thanks for your comments, Jim. Just pleased that Waipa isn't one of those 6 maps on that page for that very reason. Hazel.
Bit about what I was actually going to say, but I was also going to say, would it be appropriate for us to actually acknowledge the good work that all the farmers are doing? Because when you listen to them, and I think I listened to it on Sunday on TV, where they're working like mad and they're doing great things, but they're still getting beaten up about their emissions and all of that. And I just think it's time that we thank them for all the effort that they're putting into it.
Preach, Hazel, preach.
But I think we're a country council, and I think it's high time we kind of said something.
I couldn't agree with you more, Hazel. Lou.
Yeah, I just wanted to relate a little bit to the fact that the expansion that we're seeing, and we're in between a rock and a hard place, because we're being asked to expand our housing, all right, and create more houses. And on the other side, we've got to protect our land. The big thing I wanted to just relate to you is that in another life, I was a technician, and I used to go up to Pukekohe, and I actually know 2 or 3 of the growers up there very well. One of those growers has actually lost 50% of his land to date. That land was actually highly productive, and they could grow winter crops. And these were crops that were feeding our Auckland City. They were feeding all of us. And that land's gone, as Mike just said, forever. It doesn't matter if the land is stripped again, that topsoil's gone forever. And that is something that we must not have continuing. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lou. Joe.
My final comment in respect of this report, I'm not seeing it as doom and gloom. I'm just thinking it's a stock take of where things are at. I'd also like to point out that we now have the National Policy Statement for Urban Development, which requires us as a Tier 1 council to do intensification. So not to actually merge outwards, they want us to go upwards. And we've got a plan change 21, that is underway that allows for intensification. So I guess what I'm asking the committee to do is to put into your mind that potentially the way forward could be us going upwards in intensification rather than going outwards and taking up more land.
Point well made. I think we're all pretty much sold on that idea. Yeah, because we just can't keep gobbling up those elite soils. For sure.
But through you, Madam Chair, there is a contra to that, and with the intensification, we're seeing it now just with the application in Leamington. Existing property owners don't want spot intensification right next door to them. So despite the fact that with all of the best intentions, it can also destroy the communities that we've already built. So it's not just a case, in my view anyway, of just allowing intensification and multi-storey residential developments in existing communities, because it's not appropriate. So we've got to be really clever on how we introduce that.
Yeah, Claire and then Hazel.
Yes, and while I'm not arguing with the report, because it does make some good points, but it doesn't take into account new technologies where, food can be produced actually without any land at all. So there are developments on the horizon that are going to change the way we are, used to having our food produced. And in fact, that could be argued that we don't need as much land as we've had in the past to support ourselves?
Vote on that.
Yeah, I think that's one for a bottle of wine, Claire. Hazel.
I was just going to add to Jim's remark in that, you know, when I go over to Cambridge and I drive along through Leamington, that development there on the right-hand side by the roundabout, they've got some lovely two-storied buildings in there that look, most of it, I've never heard anybody complaining about that. And I think if we get the style right amongst now, because I think as a grandma and now as a great grandma, I want the place to be cleaned up. I don't want to have grandchildren and great grandchildren and children growing up still having to look for you know, for things that we've created. And I think with good planning, we could go up. And as long as it's attractive, and even in Hamilton, when I've driven over to Chartwell Square, there are very nice buildings that fit in with the community that are now going upwards. And so I think maybe we should ask some architects to come up with some drawings or something for us to settle your mind that going upwards isn't all that unattractive.
Thanks, Hazel. Roger, then Philip.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to endorse the fact that there are some good examples of higher density housing, and one particularly at the end of Vauxhall Street in Cambridge, just by the Trotting Club there, where there are 11 townhouses that are like just a terraced street, if you like, but quite attractive and a good example of high density housing.
Philip, then Mike.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Just on what Councillor Barnes was saying, I met up with Kevin Honus last week, which is one of our leading developers in Cambridge and Waikato. And part of C1, he's got an urban designer, but part of C1, he's got 2 hectares. He's building 150. It's going to be 150 apartments, 2-storied, multi-storied apartments, homes in that area. If 2 hectares on building a house on a normal size section is 23. So this is going to have 150 in one area. But, you know, with regards to highly productive soils, there's 2 farms out in Temero that have just, one's a dairy farm, just subdivided 6 sections off it. Admittedly, they're only 2,500 square meters, so the large lot residential. And then there's another farm which is about 700-800 acres, Hope Hill, which has just cut off about 5 or 6 sections there. They're multiple size sections, so they're from 5,000 square meters to 2 or 3 hectares. So they have farms there that are our farm baskets. And I'd like to see in the future whether instead of having farms being developed, is having lifestyle properties being able to be large lot residential, something that's under 10 hectares, that you can't put multiple 10 hectares together. It's just not economic, but smaller properties like that, smaller lifestyle properties under 10 hectares, 15 hectares, whatever it is, to be able to be subdivided in the future, rather than these big farms being subdivided in the future. But also to help with growth and farm succession, still allow those farms to have a retirement title, which we used to have 5,000 square meters, so mum and dad can get off the farm, build a new home, and then the children can get into the family home and take over the farm. But yeah, that's my thoughts anyway.
Thanks, Philip. Mike.
Yeah, just picking up on Councillor Gordon's comments there. I think it's what we define in reality of intensification, and that subdivision that you're sort of talking about, because my boy had a little look at a section there, but those sections are still 500 square meters odd, some are slightly bigger. So it's not intensification, I think, like we're talking, say, in Leamington, average plot size, I think, of 175 square meters, multiple story, multiple units. That's, I think, what people are a little bit fearful of just changing the landscape of a street or you know, that sort of thing. So it is something that's going to be quite political, and it has to be handled quite delicately. And I think we have to really take on board the neighbours in these areas, because you have to, I guess, couch it with, would I have this next to me? Would I want to lose my son? Would I want to have 20 traffic, 20 cars out on the street, because you don't have to have parking anymore? It's going to all be out in the street. It's all a knock-on effects. So I think we, the council, have to really consider. And Kevin Honus's thing there, I hope it doesn't become, it could become emergency housing and free up some motels. Do we want that? I think not.
Thanks for your comments, Mike. Lou, did you have the final thing to say?
I just think that Councillor Coles' statement has a lot of merit, in the ability to have infill housing on the, as you say, lifestyle blocks is something I think that we do need to look at very, very positively. Because a lot of those lifestyle blocks are not going to be productive. You cannot make a living off 10 acres. Even if you grow vegetables or anything else, the actual cost of infrastructure and placing it in there becomes horrendous. So I think that's a very, very big positive.
Right, so on that final comment then, thank you, Joe, for your report. It's obviously prompted a bit of thought and conversation. Have a recommendation there on page 77 to receive your report. I'm happy to remove from the chair. And Bruce will second. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Fantastic. Thank you. So we move then to the 9th item on our agenda, which is the final draft Memorial Park concept plan. And Debbie is going to address us on this one, introduce the item.
Madam Chair, did you need me to leave the room? Or?
No, you're all right.
Okay, thank you.
Just don't say anything, Lou. I'll get the masking tape. Hold on.
Morena koto. So we will take the report as read, but just before we start, I wanted to remind you of the process to date and where we're up to today. So changes to the draft plan have been approved at the April meeting, and subsequent to this meeting, staff have gone away to make these changes, and the report before you today seeks approval for the final concept plan. A significant amount of consultation with councillors, the community board and the community has been undertaken to get us to this point. And I just want to acknowledge the enormous amount of work that has been put into this from staff within my group. On Friday night, we received 3 Prinz Awards for the engagement that we've done with the community on our premier parks, and this includes Memorial Park. And I think this is a testament to the enormous amount of hard work that has been put into this. So before we take questions, I just want to remind you that the budget for this was approved during the LTP deliberations, and it is going to be funded from asset sales, and that this does mean that the work will begin as this funding becomes available. Just to clarify that point for you. I'm happy to take questions.
Questions from anyone? Bruce.
Just it's a basic question. As the process develops, will you stay connected? I've had numerous conversations with one of the submitters as part of a group saying that his only concern was, as it goes forward, can you stay connected with with the community and iwi? He said it's quite a simple thing, but he said sometimes they get neglected if there's anything to do.
Through the chair, yes, we will.
Thanks, Sally. Jim and then Claire.
Through you, Madam Chair. Look, I appreciate the through the process that we've said asset sales, but have we got a program of the assets that we're intending to sell to fund this and an approximate timing? Because at the moment, property is a really hot market. So I would anticipate selling property isn't going to be too much of a problem, but have we identified which properties we're talking about and a program to actually have those marketed?
So we're working through a property strategy currently, and we should be able to bring something to you in the next few months to workshop that with you. We do have a number of priorities for asset sales, so it's not just Memorial Park, so there's a bit of work that needs to be done, but happy to update you as soon as I have some progress to report.
Certainly, I just don't want it just to be left out there in the ether, just waiting on the odd chance we sell a section or something like that. We need a program so that we've got some certainty about what's happening.
Yes, and we are working through a program.
Thanks for your question, Jim. Claire.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, I was really interested too, Debbie, in that the likelihood of when that money would become available to get the work underway. So really pleased that that's being worked on. And I just want to acknowledge Sally and Tawfiq. Thanks. I sent through a lot of questions yesterday. Thanks so much. That has certainly allayed some of my concerns. And I appreciate all the work that's been put in. In fact, I do think that you know, looking at the iterations of the plan, I think that we've definitely come to, I think, a really good space that gives space to mana whenua, but also recognises the memorial nature of the park too. So I was a bit disappointed that the plan itself, the title is Memorial Park, but I think it should be Te Awamutu War Memorial Park Concept Plan, because that is the correct name of it. And picking up on what Bruce has said about ongoing engagement with the community group, that's obviously got a lot of interest in it. I'm really pleased that I understand that you are planning a memorandum of understanding or something like that. Is that right, Sally?
So if I can just respond through the chair, we will make the changes to ensure that the correct name of the park is referred to for the concept plan. And yes, Craig and I are just currently trying to align diaries over the next week to catch up. So we'll start that process around an MOU and an agreement, and then working through when we can start the implementation through the asset sales. So yes.
Yeah, no, that seems to be really important to the group. And it'd be on the page 2 of the plan, it lists the key stakeholders, but it doesn't list that community group. And I mean, the response I got back from you was what this was the people that they were consulted on at the beginning, you know, like as sort of as a historical record of who was involved, which seems a bit strange to me. I think would it be possible to have that community group listed as a key stakeholder, so that, because like, as this is a long-term sort of document, and going forward, like when it gets reviewed in 5 or 10 years time, I mean, chances are that we'll have a whole new set of staff, you know, and it's kind of like a record of who they need to be involved with in the future, you know, like with a review. So that's my approach, that I think it'd be good to record that group as a key stakeholder.
Sally.
So just again through the chair, the reason why they're not identified as a key stakeholder was explaining the process that we have been through. At the time that we did talk to the initial key stakeholders, they weren't actually a formed group. Obviously, there has been some reiterations of the group as well during that process. If we can, I suppose, note them, because we did at times when we were looking at different options, did talk to them. We can note them around the consultation, but I think in terms of our other groups and the way they were consulted at, I don't think it's appropriate to identify them as a key stakeholder from the outset. So through the chair, if councillor is happy for us to recognise in the document that they were a group that we have talked with, then I'm happy to note that. And most probably have to note their reiterations of names as well of the group. So I'm happy to do that if that's all right through the chair.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Claire. And I echo your comments in terms of the fact that there have been several iterations of this plan, and there have been lessons learned in the process, and that there's been a lot of work done by staff to try and accommodate a lot of the issues that have been brought to light by members of the community. So, and I thank the community for that, and I think staff have adopted, for the most part, those issues that have been raised. Did you have anything further to add, Claire?
I just wanted to cover off the hydrology report, which I understand has been discussed, because I don't think that's mentioned in the plan, but there's been a request that before more work's done, like on the Puna and the pond area, that there's more like I suppose good data that there would be a hydrology report, so that you're informed by some up to the minute information on?
So if I can through the chair, I think we need to recognise that this is a concept plan, so it is at a very high level. The next steps of the process when we look at will include detailed design, and that's when that information is pulled together. So I think some of the actions that we did talk to and agree through implementation of the plan is a vegetation management plan as well. So it's at that detail we would do that work, not at this point. And those are the clear messages that we have given back to those who have asked for that. So, you know, the essentialness of can call it today is that we do need this concept plan to be able to move forward to do that work. Without your direction or decision today, we can't go ahead and do that work. And I think in terms of emails that the group have sent out this week, I think they do, it's time to get on. And so that's, I think, what today is all about, is enabling us to do that.
Okay.
Show on the road, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Oh, just one
more thing, and then Andrew.
Yeah. Well, it's just the first time it's been mentioned about the dog off leash area on the north side of the park. Yeah. And so I'd just like to signal that I think there's a proposal that status of that would be reviewed in future, and it's likely that it'd be recommended that it becomes an on lead rather than off leash area. And I just think that that's going to be a bit of a challenge for, I don't think there are many other off leash areas in Tuamotu, and whether or not at the moment, the way that the concept plan is, we only have the Marahupara play area on that north side, and that whether or not, you know, when the detailed design comes forward, and you probably will talk to dog people at that time, that another suitable site might be able to be found for that play area, just so that we could retain the dog off-leash area. I just think that, you know, I don't know if anyone's been consulted from a dog perspective, but I think that's going to be, difficult to give up. Yeah.
So once again, just through the chair, I think that will be through the next process. Also, in terms of dog off lead, dog on lead, it goes through a whole nother policy and bylaw requirement. So at the moment, that's where those considerations would need to come through, is during that process as well. So I don't think it's quite appropriate to look at that right now. I think it is once again is in the next phase for us.
Yeah, thanks, Sally. Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. I just wanted to clarify a little bit about the funding, and as to whether there's any funding now. I know, you know, we can't go ahead with the major stuff, but is there any funding available to get started on the short-term projects identified?
No, is the short answer.
Well, that's very easy to understand anyway. And look, the second one about the pond, I'm very happy to see a wetland proposed. But again, I guess that's high level, and you're going to have to go through a process to ensure that that's so that's all good. I did have a question on the last bullet point on page 86. I just, probably being stupid, but I'd just like a bit of clarification on what that means exactly. So amend all proposed strategies to plans more accurate. So that is getting to the detail, I take it. Yeah, okay. Apart from that, congratulations. I think you've done a great job on this, and I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Andrew. Marcus, did you have something to add? Just before we launch into the recommendation, there's a small amendment we need to make given the discussions we've had. And Mariata, did you want to make a comment? Okay, you make that comment before I do this.
Kia ora, morena tātou. Just a couple of comments. So it's great to see, visually our mana whenua engagement being represented through this document. So just want to acknowledge you all for that. I've just got a couple of things. On figure 1, I think it's page 2, there's some errors in the identification of some of those buildings. Just on the top left-hand corner around Te Wananga o Aotearoa. So some of those buildings aren't quite correctly identified. But I can send that to you later if you want, or meet with you later around that. I also really want to pick up on what Bruce was saying earlier. I'd really like to see a robust communications plan with this, because there was a lot of miscommunication through the process leading up to this. And I want to make sure that we have a "you said, and this is what we did about it" kind of approach, just so that all the parties that have been involved are clear on the direction. That's probably the biggest thing from me. But there'll also be progress reports coming back to us. Is that right, in terms of the process?
Certainly, and very much take on those boards, so those points. So thank you very much. Obviously, until we get some funding, we can't do anything until that point. But yes, like all of our projects and my quarterly update, I'm happy to provide those updates to you.
Thank you, Miriata. Claire, did you have something to add?
Sorry, but just Sally, on that point about funding, you know, like, how do you feel as the manager of this, you know, the overall activity, that you are constrained by the need for asset sales to happen before any work can be done? Like, I mean, we are still finalising the long-term plan. Like, do you feel that it would be actually good to have a bit more of an operational budget, so that some of this, I don't know, key things that you see as a priority could actually get underway without having to wait for asset sales?
I'll just respond to that if that's okay. I guess I just want you to cast your mind back to deliberations, and we were getting very close to our kind of cut-off point. So at this stage, it would be a lot of rework and make things very difficult to make changes to the LTP. Yeah.
Hazel, and then
First of all, congratulations to Deb and your team for the awards that you won. That was amazing and very satisfying for you, I guess. But have I clearly understood that the group that are now working, volunteers, are still going to be consulted or can be part of the consultation process along the way? Because, you know, when you finish this plan, they're going to be the ones that are still there. And we know council does some wonderful work, but then they clear off. And so I just think that for the knitting together of our community over this project, which drew so much opposition because the communications weren't there, and the voice of those against it got heard loud and clear. But we've now got this group that is still working there, or still interested in it, and we got a letter from them to say that they really, really wanted to remain. So have I understood from the people that you intend, through you, Madam Chair, that group will keep given all the information so that we can have peace again?
Short answer, yes.
Thank you.
They're working through a memorandum of understanding, Hazel, so yes. Any other final comments?
Yeah, just I'm pleased that the concept plan is being given a green light to get ahead, and we can actually start on something, because I think in many cases we have ideas and they're kind of put into a side basket. I'm still concerned that there is a degree of debate within the Te Awamutu community about where this should go. And I see that the action plan is still going to be for discussion and involving those people within the community. So I certainly endorse that, and I'm hoping that that will be a continued conversation going forward, so people feel associated and connected with whatever happens with the War Memorial Park. Thanks.
Thank you, Roger. So there's just the one amendment to our recommendations as they appear on page 85. There's obviously, it says that the SPNP committee received the report And B, the amendment is adopt the final Memorial Park concept plan subject to the minor editorial amendments and to include reference to the Friends of the Memorial Park and the War Memorial Park Maintenance Group in the document. Then C remains unchanged, which is to endorse the final Memorial Park concept plan action plan. Andrew.
Can we change that to receive the report titled Final War Memorial Park, or is
that's what the plan's actually, the document is, the report is titled that. So we're receiving a report that's titled that already. There is an understanding that the draft concept plan will include the word war, but the actual report that's been filed today doesn't. It's a bit, yeah. But your intention of what you're trying to, yeah, it will be taken care of. So with that in mind, the amendment I've referred to there on paragraph B, I did have somebody who was happy to move it, didn't I, Andrew? And did Marcus seconded it?
Sorry, where have the amendments come from?
We've agreed in our discussions before that we will make reference to the Friends of Memorial Park and the War Memorial Park Maintenance Group in the document, but they're not referred to or elevated to being stakeholders because they weren't initial stakeholders at the commencement of the process. But there is reference made to them so that it's captured should at some later date, should the matter be reviewed, they're not lost in the process. We're all comfortable with that? Okay, so Andrew's moved it. Marcus, have you seconded it? You seconded it. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Fantastic. Well done, team. Thank you for your hard work. So that then moves us on to our next item, which is a resolution to exclude the public. Oh, you're clever. You're on the page. Late item. The late item, you're right. So we can't be excluding public just at the moment, which was, where have we got it? So we've moved the late item and we'll deal with that matter now. As you'll recall, Jim addressed this earlier, and the suggestion is that we note that the Strategic Planning and Policy Committee note that while the committee did not grant the Presbyterian Church funding in the 2021 to 2031 long-term plan, it supports the project in principle. Yeah, we obviously dealt with the request, declined the request for the money, but nevertheless supported the project in principle. And they need that noted just for the purposes of going forward for other external funding. So Bruce, you're happy to move? Miriata's happy to second. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Fantastic. So then we move on to our resolution to exclude the public. We have that on page 135 and 36. Andrew moved, Lou seconded. All those in favour